And so my name is Bill Buchanan, and I lead a podcast on the world leaders in cryptography. And I'm so happy to have a true world leader with me today, and that's Moti Young. Hi, Moti.
Hi, Bill. Nice to meet you
Great.
electronically.
Yeah. Moti is a security and privacy research scientist with Google and an adjunct research faculty member at the Computer Science Department of Columbia University. He received his PhD from Columbia University in 1998. In 2010, he gave the IACR Distinguished Lecture and has also been the recipient of the 2014 ACM SIGSAC Outstanding Innovation Award, the 2014 ESORICS Outstanding Research Award, an IBM Outstanding Innovation Award, a Google OC. OC stands for
Operating committee, the CEO and its direct reportees.
That's excellent. And also a Google's Founder Award.
These are the two founders.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, maybe we can chat about that a little bit later. Moti has also received three Test of Time awards. That shows the impact of your work, true test of time, including in 2014 for his 1998 paper on the security of the ElGamal based encryption, and in 2020 for his 1996 paper, Cryptovirology, extortion-based security threats and countermeasures. In 2021, Moti received the Women of the ENIAC Computer Pioneer Award, and overall his focus is on areas such as security, privacy, and cryptography. Wow, there's so many awards there. You must have a shelf just full of awards for the work that you've done. Well done. So, what's your current role and what does a typical day involve for you?
So I am a senior research scientist at Google, and therefore my time is spent evenly, on the average, not every day, between problems that come out of the company, engineering, business, and so on, needs, legal, and pure science that I choose to do with the vision that this will strengthen my understanding of issues, strengthen my connections with the scientific community, and or something that I see that in the future will help the company. So my typical day is I wake up in the morning and brief breakfast, usually coffee, and before walking to the office, I spend about 2 hours, and this morning I'm spending them with you, thinking about the problem that either did not let me sleep well at night, or the problem that I decided 2 days ago to put aside and come back to. And it can be both a technological problem where I am to help the company directly, or it can be a scientific problem, pure scientific problem, something that is of current interest of mine. Of course, there is a connection between the two. And by the way, everything I tell you today comes from me. I don't represent the company, and I didn't clear it with the company. It's my view. It's my personal view.
That's excellent. And so, what were your school days like? Were you a good pupil at school? What subjects did you enjoy at school?
So it's interesting. In high school, my major, so to speak, was biology.
Ah,
But which was good because it's one way of thinking, and many of the people in my concentration went on to become doctors, medical doctors, and medical researchers. And but I somehow in high school I started to find mathematics to be interesting to me, in the sense that I don't know if it was when I was 15, let's say 15, I had a very terrible teacher of mathematics, and I didn't come to classes because I could not make sense of what she was teaching. I didn't know yet that the mathematics literature is full of books that will not make sense for me, and I will need to read other books, because there are various approaches to explaining every mathematical structure and phenomenon. So I didn't go to classes, and then I would come to class, once every 2 months, once every month. And I came to class, and there was an exam. And I was not in classes, so I skipped all of it, and I had to do it from scratch. I didn't learn the subject, and I had to do it. During the exam, I learned about half of the subjects myself while thinking, and I managed to get with like 50% of the grade, which was failure. But for me, it was a success because I was not in classes. And then I asked people to tell me what they learned, and I learned from the books. And of course, the next exam, I got 100%. And I said, oh, this is something that I know how to study by myself. And this is very encouraging. That by reading and by talking to others, by preparing together and coaching others to answer questions that I read in the book, made me, suddenly I moved from 50 to 100, and so I liked it. That's how I got hooked on it. And another experience is that I did the final exam years later in high school, and there was a question it involved triangles, and they say, oh, the height of the triangle is H, the base is B. And it was such a triangle that I said, okay, let's call the B over 2. I rename it B. I don't want to carry the divided by 2 all over. I wrote it explicitly, and I solved the problem. And they didn't give me the grade for that question because I was off by a factor of 2. And then I insisted. I went to the teacher and I said, look, why should I do it this? I didn't know about renaming variables and all these things that you learn in life, but I did it. I practiced it. So she said, yes. She gave me full grade for that. And then that's why I liked it, because I knew that I feel well there, in some sense. When you feel well, you just continue to pursue the subject.
Yeah.
Therefore, I pursued mathematics for my major subject in the university. And then while doing the math and doing all the things, I found myself that discrete math is something that I like better than the continuous one, in the sense that combinatorics and logics and things like this. And then if you are there and you also take a minor in computer science, then you go for theoretical computer science as the natural career path. So this is the way I got into it, by trial and error in some sense.
Yeah. Sounds like a nightmare. It's one of my nightmares, is to have an examination and I've not studied at all or not attended any class. So you've just brought back my big nightmare overall. But it's quite amazing that you tend to be a first principles type of person rather than using a standard formula. You worked out yourself, and I think that's a sign of true intellect. And it's great that the teacher awarded that with a good grade, because many teachers go by the book and don't see that inspiration. So what got you into cryptography?
Oh, this is very interesting. I took a graduate class that was 1/3 complexity theory, 1/3 algorithmic, as the as the exploitation of problems that have low complexity, and 1/3 cryptography as exploitation of hardness of algorithms. And I liked it. I liked the cryptography part because I saw the value in it. It was it was in the 80s, and then I met Adi Shamir.
Wow.
And I asked him, is it true? Is it okay? You know, now that you guys solved RSA and everything is solved, should I pursue research in cryptography? And he said, and he told me, from his point of view, the field just started.
Yeah.
And that was a very good advice. In parallel, I ordered an IEEE booklet that at the time, in the first part of the 80s, had all the papers in cryptography in them, from the DES paper, RSA, Diffie-Hellman, everything that was known, and I read it. And so I studied, again, by myself, reading, not understanding everything, but understanding the gist of the field, and it looked a very interesting field which combines both underlying mathematics, knowledge of algorithms and protocols, is useful in communication, and I did my master's thesis, which is my first paper in '84, in the subject, based on work of initial work of Manuel Blum, pursuing the new notion of oblivious transfer at the time, and I decided to do my PhD also in the field, try it. It was all, I was mainly drawn initially to the theory of the field, to the foundations. In '83, the Department of Computer Science at Columbia asked me to write a letter for an IBM graduate studies fellowship. So it's interesting what I wrote. And I use this sometimes when I teach or give lectures to students, and I add a joke to it. But what I wrote to IBM is that in the future, the dominant paradigm of computing is going to be a network of computers that are going to work together, and they will need to communicate to each other for doing various transactions and other tasks, and therefore cryptography is going to be needed for that future network that will be the future computer, and therefore cryptography is very important. And I have the background both in mathematics and computer science, so please support me. And I got the fellowship because otherwise I would not tell this story. And what I tell students at the end as a joke, that if they hear from someone that Al Gore invented the internet, please correct them and add my name too. Because in the letter to IBM, I kind of envisioned the internet. Of course, it's just a joke. I understand technology, that I did not invent the internet.
Yeah. And it's true, I think DARPA went ahead and funded a lot of the cryptography work because they obviously had this problem where they had to route packets now onto a more public network. It wasn't a private network anyway. And I think a lot of the investment came from that research that went into academia. And for Adi Shamir, where did you meet him? Because he's obviously from MIT.
I met him in a swimming pool in a hotel where there was a conference.
Excellent. Yeah.
It was the best social circumstances, in a recess in a conference where that's the best part of conference. You meet people. I didn't know it at the time, but I met him, and I decided to ask a question.
Yeah. But he has contributed so much. So he was the S in RSA. It was Ron Reverse idea, but it was Shamir and Edelman who really probed and investigated the methods and tried to crack and so on. And then obviously we have Shamir secret shares. We have the Fiat Shamir method, which is now used in post-quantum cryptography, digital signatures and so on, and zero knowledge proofs and so on. So really a long time. What is it about the Israeli psyche and in mathematics and science that really advances these types of areas?
I don't know, but there are certain fields of mathematics, and some of them are related to technology, where Israeli mathematicians are drawn to. Game theory is one area, and definitely theoretical computer science is another area, and there are traditional reasons for people to go and study deeply certain fields, and there were at times Soviet mathematicians in Israel that came to Israel and enriched the field of study, and it was and still is going on quite strongly.
Yeah. And I think you introduced the term of kleptography. Can you tell us what that represents?
Yes. So for about 10 years, I pursued and that was the good time to pursue it. I pursued foundation of cryptography and contributed. I wrote the second paper or the third paper on zero knowledge, the second paper or the third paper on multi-party computation, and things like this, because people were a little bit ahead of me, and they were in MIT and Berkeley, and as groups, they really created the area of foundations of cryptography. So I was pursuing this, and it went like this. Here is a problem. Here is a construction that solves the problem. Here is a model that models the problem. Here is a construction that solves it in the model, and here is a proof. And you work hard, and then all parts of the paper, they match: the problem, the model, the construction, the proof. If they agree with each other, you know that you had a paper. So it was a great field and a great time for cryptography. And the thought was, wow, this is really the golden area. And I was really thankful to, and I am still thankful to all the other people that worked in the field, from the very first pioneers, RSA, Michael Rabin, to the people that started foundational work, Manuel Blum and Shafi Goldwasser and Silvio Micali. All these people, and others, of course, and the field started to also get applications in some sense, because people wanted the notion of semantic security to make sure that actual systems are doing semantic security. And I started to work in industry. This is another story, how I got started and then got stuck in industrial research. But after about 10 years of doing it, I decided if everything is so great, something must be wrong. It can be that a field that started in the 70s in its 90s, after about 20 years, it's already at a saturation point that everything is great, 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 everything just moved forward. And I started to look at another venue to approach cryptography. And now I call it repurposing cryptography. So you have a cryptography that was designed for one purpose, for a single purpose, and then you show you use the right tools to perform the task. You have a construction, and then you have a proof that you did the construction well, and so on. But the cryptography tools are there. So in what ways they can be abused, in what ways they can be repurposed, either used for something else, or be used covertly to do something else, and this led first to cryptovirology, and then to kleptography. So specifically, kleptography is the area of somebody replacing the algorithms or the constants of the algorithms or the way the algorithm is given to the user, and the user employs it and thinks that it gets all the security in the world. And he gets all the security in the world except for this one attacker that changed, monkeyed, manipulated the algorithm. And in a sequence of papers in 96, 97, we showed how to subvert this way RSA, Diffie-Hellman, and signature based on the discrete log problem, and so on. And this was meant to be a warning sign. And then, people accepted it as an insight about potential abuse by, let's say, authorities who wants to control cryptography and put a trapdoor in, and if they know the trapdoor, it's broken. If you don't know the trapdoor, the scheme is as secure as the original scheme. We had construction, and we proved its security, which included two proofs of security. The proof of security to everybody in the world that the scheme is secure, and the proof of security that the guy who put the trapdoor in the system gets his own security and is the only one who can abuse the system. And in the first paper we wrote, and certain organizations would love this exclusivity. And then people said, oh, it's nice, it's a nice theory, because I was working on foundations, modification of foundations. And it went like this until Snowden came and told us that, lo and behold, when I look at Snowden claim, I saw this is a Crypto 97 paper of mine, changed from elementary groups to discrete log proofs and used in the dual elliptic curve pseudorandom generator. In another paper, we dealt with the dual elliptic curves as a method of generating random looking elements. That was another paper with the same co-author, Adam Young, who was my student at the time, and I did this sequence of papers with him. And then this kleptography gained the recognition that it can be used to attack real systems, and therefore people started paying attention to it. So beyond esoteric theory, it became like a real thing.
Yeah. It became a real thing because NIST, or the NSA, tried to push it as a standard with NIST. So
Yes.
that backdoor was there. So that was intentional so you created the dual EC method and showed that there was some sort of
No,
backdoor there? No?
again, we showed it in principle,
Yeah.
but what we used is what we use. We called it the repeated Diffie-Hellman problem.
Yeah.
We showed essentially that Diffie-Hellman, if you do it 2 times, you can leak the second key, or you can do t out of t plus 1 repetitions, and that logic, that algebraic scheme, was adopted by whoever worked on it in NIST to the dual EC system. We use dual EC for other things, for other purposes. Actually, we used it to embed the RSA trapdoor in the half of the RSA bits for the sake of attacking the RSA. So they combined these 2 ideas. They still had work to do. You know, these organizations employ a lot of cryptographers, and probably they are very good people, and they did a good job. And this was the best way to employ it in a covert way, where they only manipulated the constants and left the generation algorithm intact. So the modification was small. In fact, you take this method, and rather than generating the seeds in the way they did with correlation, you generate them randomly and you get security. So they always, there was the benefit of the doubt. No, we don't know how to do it, but there was a reason for that. I believe. I can only believe. I don't know.
Yeah.
And people believe.
There are some standards just now that are still questionable. I think the SEPT 256K1 and R1 curves have a rather patchy background. I think it was an ex-NSA employee who created the seed for those curves. But obviously we've been through AES, SHA-256, SHA-3. Now we've got the post-quantum cryptography methods. Do you think it's rigorous enough? Because Snowden happened and then the NIST EC, the dual EC, was identified. I think Bruce Snyder was the one that said that there was a definite link there. Do you think we're much more rigorous now with our standards, and that we should really believe that they have been properly tested?
I don't know, but I think we are less naive about it. I can say for sure we are less naive. So we always look for it, and people try to test it. But to say at the time 100% sure, I cannot say it. In cryptography, you can almost never say it. Whatever you work on can, as an assumption, can be broken tomorrow, even not intentionally and maliciously, but just by the evolution, the natural evolution of mathematics, and by the fact that people will pay attention to it, work on it, and will break it, and so it's hard to say exactly that things are rigorous, but the era of naivety has passed.
Yeah, that's true. I think obviously academia tends to source much of the work, and really you've got to trust academia with their standards, that they aren't being paid by someone else. So you talked about cryptovirology there. Could you give us an example of what that looks like?
Cryptovirology was essentially the invention in an academic setting of what is known now today as ransomware.
Yeah.
We in the first paper, that you mentioned got a Test of Time award after 24 years by the security and privacy community in IEEE, was actually, we implemented in a very closed environment the first ransomware attack. And the idea was to distribute a Trojan horse that has an encryption key that encrypts somebody's files, and with essentially hybrid encryption, encrypts the symmetric key that may have been used to encrypt all the files with a public key of the attacker, which resides in the software, but the trapdoor, the private key, is never in the software. So you can take the software, analyze whatever, you will not get the key. And we came up with this idea at the time, the power of public key cryptography, the asymmetric power between the guy who knows the trapdoor and everybody else, was known to us. The early attempts to use cryptography to design something like this, to lock your files in encryption, were using symmetric key. And when we got the idea, the first thing was, somebody may just take the known idea of using a symmetric key and just say, let's replace it with an RSA key, I'll keep the trapdoor. And we'll invent it in the wild, and nobody would know about it. So, and in that paper, we have a discussion about ethics, why to publish it, because it is an attack, and as we know now, it's billions of dollars dark industry. But there is a big discussion, and in the paper, and we treat technology as technology. It can be used for good reasons and for bad reasons, and it's much better to tell the scientific community, the academic community, and so on about this threat. We also wrote a book which includes this. The reception of the kleptographic ideas by the so-called experts of the time in the area of virology, viruses, was that this is, again, an academic idea, that nobody will use it.
No way.
Maybe some countries, some state organizations, but not virus writers. These scathing reviews are available on the internet, but I will not point it to you. When it's also obvious that they are wrong. Yeah. Why should I bother with this? But this is a typical reaction. We were very concerned that the antivirus companies and people who are supposed to do it did not take it seriously. And to a point that follow-up publications we even did not publish, or published in a small place somewhere. To the point it was very, very surprising. Of course, about 10 years or 15 years after, there was the attack, and in the paper we put all the ingredients that are needed. We even say in the future there's going to be a working electronic cache scheme that will enhance the motivation of attackers to use ransomware. And of course, Bitcoin was a big booster for the adoption of ransomware, of the ransomware industry. And I didn't understand why people did not understand it. I think they did not understand the incentive. I used to give talks and say, people are hacking just for bragging rights. Yeah. Imagine when they can get money out of it. And I knew incentives because when I took my undergrad in mathematics, I also took 2 years of economics just as a sidekick to learn more. So I understood incentives very well. And I mean, you don't have to study the field of economics to get it, but it was very obvious. And it came to be that we were right, and we gave the good guys community 10 years advantage, and we have also the countermeasures in the paper. We talk about independent backups as a way to get out, and antivirus to check for cryptographic codes where there are not supposed to be cryptography. If you see an exponentiation in some email, why do they need to exponentiate, modular exponentiation in some code that is sent to you by email? It shouldn't be there because it's not cryptography, and things like this. We had a lot of countermeasures and a lot of the ingredients and everything. It was a scientific paper. The goal was, and it had an experiment that we ran in a closed environment, and that's it. And the rest is history, I think.
Perhaps people thought you could never be so evil, and that you couldn't actually industrialize cybersecurity. As you said, the initial hackers were doing it out of pleasure and bragging rights, but now with ransomware, it's almost like the perfect crime that you can have.
There are even state attacks that are masquerading as ransomware. Where they get money, but they also achieve certain disruption roles at the same time. And nobody understood, I think, that malware can become a quasi-industrial endeavor.
Yeah. And I think you've been sometimes decades ahead of everyone else. So we're all used to video conferencing now. COVID-19 changed that completely. And few people were using video conferencing before COVID. I remember using a Cisco telephone on my desk, and would have conference calls. And to go to Skype or something like that was almost alien to us. But in 1993, you created a key distribution infrastructure for video conferencing. And I remember Zoom was criticized initially because it didn't even have symmetric key encryption to it. So could you outline roughly how key distribution would work with video conferencing?
The early paper was a method. I think other people renamed it a key pre-distribution system rather than key distribution system to distinguish it from Diffie-Hellman key distributions and other things which are done interactively. But at that time, we worked in IBM on basic authentication methods, and one of the proposals was that paper, and it was the idea to distribute polynomials evaluated under the user key, multivariate polynomials. So you take symmetric polynomials. They are derived from let's say n-variate polynomial. Polynomial. You compute it on the user's identity, and you give it to the user, And of course, now you need n-1 variables to complete the evaluation. And you give it to different users. And when, let's say it has t variables or n variables, doesn't matter. And where n people get together and they recognize the identities of each other, they can compute using their key and the IDs of the others a key. And the others having their initial key and the identities of the others, which are not themselves, you compute the same key. You use polynomial, the niceness or niceties of multivariate polynomial schemes, that it doesn't matter which variable you evaluate first. And we prove that it is secure information theoretically. This is because it's pre-distributed, and it's, let's say, the use one case is information theoretically secure, and the size of the keys were the size of the polynomials, and we had using entropy arguments, information theoretic arguments, showing that this size is also needed, a lower bound on the size. Initially, wireless communication referred to this paper quite a lot for in the sense that you want pre-distribution scheme and you want just to know who is your partner, who are your partners, and you want to establish a key. So this paper actually got a lot of citations, because the ad hoc wireless schemes that came up, people started to work on such schemes. And this work was one of the pioneers in that area.
That's great, yeah, because obviously we're using lattice cryptography a great deal now in homomorphic encryption, so I think it's all coming back. The polynomial evaluation can be now done with homomorphic methods. So I think a lot of the theory that you obviously had then has now really been reinforced because of the problems with quantum computers breaking public key encryption.
Exactly. You get more demand for information theoretically secure schemes or lattice-based schemes, or even symmetric key-based schemes that are more suitable, more agile. If quantum is going to attack them, you will not need to change all the algebra from RSA type supporting mathematics to lattice-based mathematics.
Yeah.
If you use symmetric key, you may increase the size of the basic key, but you will use the same scheme.
Yeah, that's great. And you outlined a universal one-way hash function. Can you tell me where that can be used?
Oh, okay. So the universal one-way hash function is a variant on cryptographic hash functions, but it's a weaker form of hash functions. It was used primarily as a foundational foundational tool to so around 87 or 88, people had signature schemes that are secure based on trapdoor functions. And on the other hand, there were one-time signature schemes that were based on the Lamport-Diffie method. You compute with a one-way function, with a hash function, and then you either open the first element or the second element. The first will be the zeros element or the first element, so it will be a signature on either 0 or 1, depending on the positions that you open from your initial commitment. And you can open everything, but once you open, you forget, if you open 0, you forget the pre-image of the 1, and you cannot open it the other way. And that was a very simple idea. And since people got the idea that now you can base signature on any trapdoor, it meant that it matched the RSA signature, and maybe it's the end of dealing with signatures, but we thought otherwise. We thought maybe you don't need the trapdoor at all, because you have this one-way signature that does not use a trapdoor. And the idea was, okay, so maybe we can commit and use the commitment to sign a message, but also sign the next commitment. But signing the next commitment with an existing commitment required that the new commitment has to be hashed. So we needed a cryptographic hash that you can base on something that is less than collision-free hash functions. But we wanted to do it directly from basic principles, from one-way functions. And we did it from one-way permutation in that paper in '89 with Moni Naor. And we showed that basic signature, you can prove their security, and you don't need trapdoor. Sphinx now uses this idea of signing the next signature potential, and this comes from our paper. And that was the idea. And for that, the new hash function was generated. The collision-free hash function is a strong demand. You have a function, and then let's say I hash an X, and I cannot find another Y that collides with hash of X. The universal one-way hash function is that the choice of the function in the function family and the choice of the X are done independently. And this gives a completely different creature from complexity theoretic point of view. It can be based on originally on one-way permutation in our paper, and later on any one-way function, whereas collision-free hash functions, there is a separation from one-way function from it. So it was a right intuition to design a new type of hash functions in order to settle the foundations of signature scheme, which is a very important thing to understand the entire theoretical underpinning of it. The complexity theoretic, the algebraic, and even, as I said, even Sphinx are using it because they use hash functions.
That's amazing, yeah. And obviously Sphinx Plus now makes it stateless overall.
Yes.
It's been standardized as giving a really boring name. I liked Sphinx Plus and Kyber and dilithium and all these things like Star Trek or some sort of science fiction thing, but it's been given a really boring name of SLH-DSA or FIPS 205, I think it is. But it's it's small keys, but it's a really big signature for the cipher. So I think in applications that require small keys, then Sphinx Plus looks a great bet compared to the lattice methods, but it's just this size. It's not going to be used in blockchain applications. That's for sure.
That's hard. It's hard. It's hard for certain applications. That's for sure. By the way, with Moni Naor, a year after, we wrote another foundational paper together about the first chosen ciphertext secure public key crypto system.
Yeah.
That was an open problem from the time that Michael Rabin showed that based on factoring you can get a scheme that is plaintext chosen plaintext secure, and then Ron Rivest showed that Michael Rabin's scheme is open to chosen ciphertext, and had the conjecture that every scheme that is chosen plaintext secure, where the adversary choose plaintext and you sign to it before it attempts to break the system, will not be secure with respect to ciphertext choice, where he chooses the ciphertext and asks you to decrypt. And that was breaking the squaring-based scheme, because squaring and giving you a root which is not the root that you chose gives you factoring. That's in the Rabin scheme. And but we wanted actually to do a reduction from plaintext secure to chosen ciphertext secure. This is just to understand the underpinning of the scheme, and of course it generated a new direction in cryptography that many people contributed to have chosen ciphertext public key crypto system. And it was about more than 10 years open, if it can be done. And that, in that early field, a 10-year-old problem means it wasn't easy, and it needed the technology.
Yeah. And you talked about Snowden, and I think you published a paper on post-Snowden cryptography. What was your motivation behind writing the paper? Because it could have ended up being political in some sort of way. And what were your main findings?
The main finding, and I have a number of papers on that, post-Snowden or anti-subversion cryptography, was exactly an attempt to build crypto systems that, by augmenting the architecture around it, the operation, the letting one component of the scheme check the operation of another component, avoid any attempt to subvert the system in the sense of kleptography. So if I felt that kleptography was partially my fault, quote unquote fault, though it wasn't, I need to work on ways and means to try to avoid it, and I've written a number of papers. Different countermeasures. One is when you set up the system, you have an architectural component that you trust, which we call the watchdog, that probes the different component and makes sure that in a black box fashion, sending queries getting answered, and make sure that the right component is there and hasn't been subverted. Things of that sort. And there are other methods of achieving, mitigating the kleptographic attacks, or the algorithmic substitution attacks, as other people call it. I don't care how you call it, but the main thing is to cope with it. And this is the goal of this paper.
That's great. And what's an anamorphic? What's anamorphic cryptography?
So anamorphic, first of all, is a term that comes from the art. Anamorphic picture, anamorphic art, is a picture that you look at it from one direction, you see one picture, and you look at it from a different direction, you see a second picture. You know that there is art like this, that depending on the angle in which you look, it actually carries two pictures in one frame. So the idea of anamorphic encryption is, again, you can put it in the family of cryptovirology, where the purpose of cryptography is changed, and kleptography, where the trapdoor is inserted in your system. And anamorphic encryption is in this family, namely repurposing the cryptography. But now the repurposing is going to provably help the user rather than the authorities. Whereas kleptography was modification of the encryption algorithm by the authorities under the nose of the user. Now the user is going to modify the use of cryptography under the nose of the authority, whom we name dictator. It's a dictator model in which the dictator come to the users of the encryptions and tell them, give me the receiver keys, and I allow you only to send this message. And he either attacks the receiver or the sender and gets this information from them. So it's not like he sits on the user machine and impersonates the user, but he asked the cryptographic means by which messages are chosen or decrypted. So the adversary, the attacker, the dictator, so assume he has the key, the trapdoor. So the idea is to comply with the requirements of the dictator, give him the receiver key, send message to the receiver, but this message is going to be anamorphic. Namely, it's going to have the regular message, which will be the message that the dictator wants. Maybe the message glorifies the dictator. But there's going to be another hidden message in the same ciphertext that is going to send the real message. And it will require extra keys. It resides in the same ciphertext, but it has a different message. And the different message will say, actually, the actual situation is so and so and so in this country. And this gives a new way to analyze the structure of cryptographic encryption. We started it 3 years ago in 2022, and in collaboration with other groups and other groups themselves started to look at it. You take an old scheme that somebody designed without the idea of embedding a second message, and you show that you can embed a second message. And and this teaches you about the way cryptographic schemes are made, and this is repurposing it, this time for the sake of the user, but it also gives a structural understanding of cryptography. And we have methods, general methods that go across old crypto systems, that go across few of them using the same one and showing that you can embed a second message, either in the randomness or in the other ways that the scheme is built. There is enough redundancy to send a second message. And we showed it to a number of schemes. Other people showed it for other schemes and other methods. And it's actually a very currently active area of research, anamorphic cryptography.
That's great, yeah. And we all know that there are 3 main forms of authentication. So it's something that I know, my password, something I have, such as an authentication token, and something that I am, which is my biometrics. But you introduced a 4th form of authentication. Would you like to just outline what that was?
Specifically, that was someone you know. And the idea was that the idea was first go and see why do we have 3 factors. And these 3 factors were there from the original Mac project in MIT that dealt with and had many initial ideas in security. But the main thing is that suddenly the same computer was used there was a sharing of the same computing by multi-users, and you needed to recognize the user. So something you know may be your password. Something you are maybe a biometric reader. Something you have, maybe you have a list of one-time passwords and you key in the next one. And then the server on the other side can recognize that indeed this is this user. And we started to say modern computing does not look like this. The internet is different than the time where these three factors were defined. Nothing holy about them. You know, it's technological field. The field has changed. Computing configuration has changed. Let's think about other factors. So, for example, if your friend knows that it's you on the internet and they can recognize you, they can present you to the server. And that was that paper and ways of doing it. But of course, we thought about, in general, about this thing. This was done when I was in RSA security. And we started thinking about factors that depend on the device that you log in from. Kind of environmental factors that are there and can be registered at the server, and then it gives a certain higher confidence that it may be you, and factors like this. And more than the specific factor is the fact that there are more factors that modern computing can use was the issue. And indeed, companies started to adopt other factors. You know, now it's cookies that you've been before, and it's in your browser. But that was even this even predate that method. That's the idea, to think about the modern computing as different from the old computing.
Yeah.
The old computing.
I completely agree about social networks, and they can be used as much for authentication as anything. If someone has existed in social media for 10 years, that's a good thing, and they recommend someone who's just exists as with a new identity really can't be trusted as much. So I think it's a real shame that we haven't built up that level of trust in our social networks.
Let's say you saw somebody last night, and they can ask the other guy, when is the last time you saw the guy? He said, for sure, last night. And then they ask you, and you said, yeah, for sure, I saw him last night. This is increasing the confidence that it's you. And it got independently by someone who authenticated itself in a strong way to the system. So
that's great, And so what's unforgettability encryption and chosen cipher secure modes of operation?
This one, unforgeable encryption, is the name. We did it independently from other people that called it authenticated encryption. And the method, the idea is that if you take a symmetric key encryption, and now authenticated encryption is a mode. Essentially, think about it that you encrypt the message, and you also cryptographically authenticate the message, like message authentication code, MAC, or hash with a key for people who know. So somebody who knows HMAC. So you have the encryption and the key. And we called it unforgeable. Other people called it authenticated. Authenticated I like better because it's less pretentious. And indeed, There were questions about how to do it, and now there is a way. How do you combine encryption and authentication? You can do it separately, you can do it in one pass, and we had this paper in which we showed how to do it in a single pass. You go over a long message, and you perform the message authentication code and the encryption at the same time, and it's possible. People worked on it. There are standards about it. It's a very important. Mode of operation. This means that if your message passes through a man in the middle, he cannot forge it. And if it's a woman in the middle, she cannot forge it. But the idea is, either they don't send the message, they block, they become a blocking adversary. But if you get a message through a third party, it is guaranteed to be the authentic message from the source. And this is very useful in certain configuration. I used it in certain schemes in Google, where a message definitely goes through a third party in the middle. You have to make sure that you retain authenticity.
Yeah. And I think it was Revest who created one of the first group signature methods. I think it was how to leak a secret, and it was to do with a leak in the White House.
Yes.
Very timely. And I think you did some work on group signatures. Can you see any core applications of group signatures in this modern world?
Yeah, I think the work by Revest is called ring signature.
Yeah.
Whether the group signature is originally by David Chaum.
That's
And
right,
I think it was called the group signature, and since it was called group signature, then the related ring signature was called ring signature, because there is an algebraic ring to it.
Yeah.
So, but the idea of group signature is it's a multi-use credential by which you can sign messages, but you sign on behalf of a group. It's not yourself. You say, okay, I sign it. Somebody from this group signed it. And you don't know who. And in the group signature, unlike anonymous credential, there is an authority which can actually look at a signature and open it to reveal who is the signer. So it's like you encrypt your name, and then you sign it on behalf of the group. Everybody just see an encrypted blob and the signature from the group and accept it. The authority can come and open the blob and see who in the group actually signed it, if it's needed. And this authority is trusted to do the right job. If you don't trust a single authority, then it can be done with a threshold cryptography, something that we can talk about later. And the idea is applications of this can be in certain transactions that you can sign on behalf of a group. I am moving money. I'm authorized to move, the group of people who authorized to move money, and I move money from here to another guy. And you don't need to know who. If there is a transfer that is illegal, the banking authority can interfere and find that you have done it, who has done it, and make them responsible for it. So so it's like, it's like we give you anonymity, but there is this sword hanging over your head that can fall on you in case you misbehave. So it's like optimistically assuming that everybody is going to be nice, but there is the threat of de-anonymizing the misbehavior, and this by itself will prevent most of misbehavior.
Yeah. And so what's the disinformation problem?
Oh, that's a very recent position paper that I wrote about, and due to the advancement of artificial intelligence, now we can get a lot of content, audio and video and combinations thereof that are not really real, and they are called deep fake, attributing this to the work of deep neural networks. And it's very hard with with human perception, just looking and listening, sometimes to tell, if it's not done intentionally to make it different, it's very hard to tell whether this information is actual or misinformation or disinformation that is created by generative AI, which try to fool you. And this is a new danger. It's different than many of the other crypto problems, because this happens at the plaintext level. The plaintext that is provided to you, you can sign it later, and then you know it comes from somewhere. But how do you know that that person that signed it was not fooled? Because it's at the plaintext level, it was done this way, and so we wrote a position paper that this problem is real, and there are initial ways to deal with it. And before doing anything, just educating the public to be aware that it's there, and don't be naive about it. And definitely later on generate a social network of people that can vouch for the information and things like this. It's an deepfake is an area that has more questions than answers at this point. And it's a good problem to look at from an impact point of view.
Yeah.
Some mitigation in this area will be good to have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it must keep Google awake at night with this problem, and I just wonder if more digital signing of things would help. I know it's not going to help the plain text problem, but maybe for images and video, some sort of digital signing might help. But
it might definitely it might help. It might help. Sometimes digital signing can be helpful if you trust the sources, and of course it becomes a distributed trust point of view, who vouch for it. And it's interesting in another area of related to AI. I wrote a paper about that. People are talking about robust AI when the data to the AI training is manipulated. And we ask a question: what if the sources that gives you the data sign it and you trust them? Can it be manipulated? So you cannot modify the data, you cannot invent new data, but you can drop some data. And we show that there are cases in which just dropping targeted data, you can manipulate the model. So it's the question about about whether signature can help or cannot help, or can help partially, it's a good one, because people say, can cryptography protect AI? And that's why I moved to answer that question about signed data in trying to build robust models. And it can help partially, but not fully.
And
Interesting.
I think,
We are in
yeah,
an interesting world.
yeah. And you defined a term of end to same end encryption. What does that involve?
That this has to do with the user putting its data in some cloud provider repository and then retrieves the data. And the idea is, how can you do it in a way that only the user, so the user has the data, puts it in the cloud, you get it back from the cloud and gets the data again. And the issue is, can we do it so that only the user has the data and the cloud provider does not have it? And this like end to the same end via the repository. And nobody worked on it before I did it in some industrial settings first, roughly solving it. But then it became an area for more careful and more foundational work. And we came up with results that enables cloud storage that is not for manipulation by the cloud, just as a storage repository, be protected from the cloud provider. With usually cloud provider will be trusted, but you want additional guarantees, and this is that primitive, end to same end, because it's the same user. It's via a storage channel.
Yeah. And
it
there's
is,
been,
the cloud is a dominant paradigm of computing, and we need to secure it.
yeah. And there's obviously been areas of cryptography which have been held back by patents. Perhaps not the RSA patent or the Diffie-Hellman patent, but the SNOR patent and so on. So there's always been this debate about whether researchers should be patenting their methods or not. What's your viewpoint?
So my viewpoint is that greed is always bad. So if you patent things just for greed, it's bad. I work for industry, and that's a different story. How I started to work in industry. I came after my postdoc. I came to work in IBM TJ Watson in New York.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll work 3-5 years. I'll write some papers in IBM research, have a thicker resume, and move to academia. But within the first month, I solved some crucial problem in the company about authentication, attacking their protocols, their suggested solutions, and have a solution of my own. And I realized you can be in industry, do foundational work. Nobody is going to bother you if you want to study something. But the company itself, like I called IBM at the time, I said, I have a very huge experimental laboratory at my hands, and I'm going to use it. And within 1 month, I changed my point of view. Now, one of the side effects of another side effect, besides having this huge lab in industry, is that when you have ideas that are related, or not even not if they are related, whatever idea you have, people in the company review it, and they may suggest a patent. And I can tell you that I have patents in the current company where the company actually donated the patents for industry use. So it's not a matter of greed, it's a matter of protection. And sometimes you opt to actually give it to others, and then the patent serves as a leadership mechanism. You say, oh, it's based on my patents, and I'm going to do it. And recently, Google contributed something to the ads industry to sell ads with better privacy, serving the users. You know, let people compete in other ways, but keep user privacy primal. For authentication, Google went and had the FIDO Alliance for universal second factor authentication. Yeah. I also had the first 2 patents on that. It was given away. IBM, the first patent, which is on authentication, the one that kept me in industry, which was a Crypto 91 paper on authentication, was also given by IBM for the sake of doing authentication on the internet. So not every patent, there is greed behind it. You do it for industrial reasons, sometimes because you owe to your employer, and sometimes you wish to convince your employer that even though there is a patent, using it for demonstrating leadership in the wide industry on behalf of users is the way to go. So I am while I'm constrained to have patents and propose patents or potentially suggest patents, I am not advocating for patenting everything just in order to keep everything close to your chest in order to make a lot of money. If you want to make a lot of money, there are other ways, more noble ways of doing it.
Yeah. And so what does the next decade look like in cryptography? What are the big problems to be solved?
Oh, some of it we already touched upon. This is the emergence of AI as a basic tool and basic mechanisms to achieve things. And like any other computing paradigm, it has the security associated with it. And when I stayed in industry, I started to be motivated not just by mathematics, where my foundational research is motivated by, but also by needs of technology. So this is going to be definitely, this is going to suggest new set of problems. Some of them are going to be direct and impactful on cybersecurity, and some of them are going to raise foundational problems to require new mathematical methods, new protocols, new ways of doing and understanding things. And we see the buds of the next cryptographic jungle coming out.
Yeah. And if you could change one thing about your career, what would it have been?
I don't think I would change anything. Of course, if I knew that I would change something and choose something because it was a mistake and do something that is not going to be a mistake, I would change. But I know that the guys that never do any mistakes are the guys that do nothing. So whatever you do, you're going to have a mistake. And the idea is not to avoid mistakes, because this is impossible. It's almost like security. We will not avoid all security breaches by proactively solving everything. But the idea is recovery. Recovery from mistakes. I don't claim I didn't have mistakes, but I recover from those mistakes. I'm not naive enough to say, oh, I would have never done that now, because what would you do? You will do something else. And who tells me that this is not a mistake? I don't know. Sometimes trial and error is the only way. And the skillful way of corrections is the way to do. And sometimes you learn more from a mistake than from not having a mistake and being overly careful. And so I would say I would not change many things, and I would still concentrate on what to do in the future rather than think about, oh, if, but, all this I will avoid. And this I will advise others to do the same.
Yeah. And my last question. Thank you for sticking with me for all these questions. I'm sure we could spend another hour or so talking about things. But you've been a great mentor, a great teacher to many people, many researchers. Looking back on your career, who were the great mentors and teachers that you really looked up to?
Directly, firsthand, I mentioned Adi Shamir. I can mention Ron Rivest, and whom I really spoke with and talked to about cryptography. My advisor, Tzvi Galil, who is an algorithms person, was very instrumental and encouraged me to work in cryptography. He pointed for the first time I heard about cryptography was from him, and he was right, whatever he pointed me at, and it was good. We were the first cybersecurity researchers at Columbia University in the early 80s, and that later on this department has had many people in various areas of cybersecurity. And I had the people that I directly advised. Some of them are great researchers. My students are always a source of talent to learn from. It's not embarrassing to learn from students. It's actually a good thing. I learned this way from my advisor, and I apply this method. And it also gives the student a sense of independence and prepare them for the career. And it's one of the important thing of being in the profession of research is to make sure that new people join the field and advance the research. And it's very satisfactory to work with someone that starts being in the field, doesn't know anything. Adam Young, with whom I wrote the Klepto and Cryptovirology, did not know about modular arithmetic. He came from EE. He didn't know. And nevertheless, I started to work with him, and it was very successful, because you have to trust the people's ability to learn and be creative and direct them a little bit, but let their own talents guide them. And I had very good and very successful student, Jonathan Katz, Agelos Kiayas, and many others. And even informally, I contributed to young people's career. The story is Craig Gentry. Craig Gentry was an IP lawyer that did cryptography on the side. And I told him and Dan Bonnet, go to Stanford, get a PhD, otherwise you're going to be stuck in your current company forever and frustrated. And that was a big success, of course. but I was just the guy who say, you need to have a PhD and you will enjoy it. And to let him move. You know, sometimes the, you know, serving as the last straw in somebody's choice is in this case was very meaningful personally to the person, but also to the field itself.
Yeah.
Advancing the right people, and this is one of the, you know, guiding people, talking to young people is one of my most joyful experiences, working with young people.
Yeah.
Seeing people who haven't been contaminated by being in the box for too long, it's really good. And I'm probably omitting many people, both on the mentors and the students and the young people.
Yeah.
But as you said, we don't have time for that. But there are plenty of people.
Yeah. That's good. Well, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you, and really keep up the great work. It's great to see someone who's has a foot in industry, but also in academia too. So you've done some amazing work, typically decades before anyone else actually managed to pick things up. So thank you so much, and just keep up the great work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your encouragement and for this interview.
Thank you.